Okay, it's 8:30. I'm going to go ahead and get started. We have a few people out, as you can see, but this is recording. I'm going to try to move it along here today. So we've got so today we're going to go through lessons 25 and 26. So 25, start asking the right questions. Oh, that's what I brought today. Oh, good job. Let's think ahead.
That's the manager that plans ahead right there.
You took that course way to think ahead. Good job on that. And then lesson 26, mastered the technique of describing language. So we're going to do that. So we'll cover 25, and then I'm going to go through a quick review of 21, 22, 23, 24, and 25, and then we'll take the quiz on 21 through 25. Oh, okay. Sorry. Okay, so let's watch the video.
Talking like a performance coach is simple, but that doesn't mean it's easy. And like everything, it takes practice. Practice these simple techniques. First, make sure you're talking about the work, especially the individual's work whom you're coaching. Talk about this person's performance. Get into the details. Break it down. Spell it out. Talk about what this person is doing and what this person's going to do next. And make sure you're asking the right questions. Remember, I said before, the most common questions managers ask people is, how's everything going? Is everything on track? Are there any problems I should know about? Well, what are the right questions? The right questions are, what did you do? How did you do it? Let me see. What are you going to do next? What steps are you going to follow? Let me see your plan. Let me see your work in progress. Drill down. Zero in on the performance and talk about the work in detail. And here's something else. Always point to concrete next steps. Just like anything else, talking like a performance coach is something that with practice, you'll get better and better and better.
Okay, so what did everybody get out of the video? Anybody have anything to say?
If you ask the right questions, you'll probably get the answers you want.
Right. Okay. So
the answers you need, not the answers you want.
There you go. That's what I meant. Or what?
Yeah, Devin said be deliberate about the conversation. So to get into the substance of the work that's going on, ask, what did you do? How did you do it? What are you going to do next? How are you going to do it? What steps are you going to follow? What step are you on now, and how long will it take? Ask specific questions. So one thing he did say at the end, to get concrete results is to practice. So if you are practicing, number one, you need to, prepare a conversation in writing. Then clearly conduct the conversation, describe performance, break it down and spell it out. Here's what I know. Tell me what I don't know. Here's what I want you to do next. And set goals and deadlines, and then follow up. So if you want to go to page 28 of your workbook, and you don't have a workbook, do you?
I do not.
Okay. We will get you a workbook.
Okay.
Yeah, you can share a workbook today. So on page 28 of your workbook, take a few minutes and go through those questions. Think about, think about someone that you work with, or somebody confidential, and think about a conversation and how you would put it together in terms of a script. What would you say to get the conversation started? The information, what will you say to get across the information this person needs? What will you say to give this person concrete next steps? When will you have this conversation? So as a practice, just go ahead and give that a shot with somebody that you have in mind, and take just about 5 minutes, and then we'll just discuss it as a class. And what we're going to focus on when we discuss it is more about the questions, types of questions you're asking, and how you ask them versus the content. But it's good to think of an example. Now, and you have like 30 years of experience in HR, so you might have a leg up on somebody else.
I'm looking for her accreditation in the back.
Lord,
I don't know. Steve, have you been in class here? Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you have been here every week.
you're not getting any credit.
I'm
Did
sorry.
miss a couple, but I watched the videos.
Oh, okay. Cool.
His manager beat up on him directly and probably didn't directly.
I just reminded myself of my science teacher in high school.
Did you?
Dave, have you actually been in class? It was after lunch and science. Just wasn't my thing. We'll give it just about one more minute, and then we'll have a group discussion.
Yeah.
let's get things rolling here. So in terms of the beginning, somebody get us started here. What types of things do people in here use to get a performance or coaching, teaching, one-on-one conversation started? What kind of statements do you use? Steve, what do you say to someone? How do you get it started? How do you break the ice and get things rolling?
I just come out and ask them, where are we at on what we're working on, whatever I'm talking to that person about, where are we at on this?
So I guess maybe a good, first statement, but then I guess, in the spirit of the class, do you obviously that person knows specifically what you're talking about, or you say where we at on this?
Where are we starting the conversation at?
Yeah, like right when they walk in, and I mean, just practicing, what would you say when they walk in, and how would you get things rolling?
I don't.
Yeah, okay, so then once you go that,
I don't get this stuff.
All right, so maybe something like, okay, I've noticed that the work on the project was due at noon yesterday, and you haven't turned it in yet. Maybe that
Are
would be.
we assuming that there's a problem with the things?
Yeah, we're saying we're having a coaching or teaching script. I guess we're not saying it's nothing. We're assuming something wrong.
It's a performance conversation, not you can't give it as like, okay, where are we at? So
It's a
it's a
performance
one-on-one about a
conversation.
performance conversation.
Yeah, it is a performance conversation.
Well, and I guess in that aspect, I would ask, what happened? Where did we fall short on this?
Okay.
What could we have done to get there?
Okay. Matt, do you have some ideas?
Well, sometimes you talk about asking that person. It's about the individual, right? So we need to start with where we roll back down to knowing the person, right? Are they a specifics person, or are they a broad, big picture person? How do you need to talk to that person? I guess in my mind, a good question that I took out of it is to say, when you're trying to break the ice, right? Asking that person, how do you think we're doing? How do you think it's going? That's kind of what I got. What do you see first? Give them the opportunity to jump out and see where they see, and then you can kind of work your way towards that.
I'll use one we did yesterday with Mariah, because she is going to start doing the under 100 horsepower compact utility tractors, the evals. So she had done a couple of them yesterday, and we did her 15 minutes. She was there. So I had her come in, and I asked her how comfortable she was doing those last two that she did, and then then we went through and worked through each step or problem she had. But that's how I broke it, is how comfortable she was.
Yeah.
To see where she was at in the process.
Yeah, I think that's good to I think that's a great idea to create a vision in their mind of, what kind of results that they're getting compared to, what the vision might be that you created when you talked about their objectives, and comparing that.
Well, it helps you with your roadmap too.
Mm-hmm.
If you have an idea of where they think they're at, then it can help you guide yourself.
That's the rest of my stuff from there on. So
Chad, will you share kind of the information that what you had as you
then after that, after we did talk about it for a little bit, then I just went through kind of the bullet points of doing different evals, told her on the information part of it to remember to always check the comparable sales history. Remember always to check the 12-month auction data. And we had a weird one yesterday because it was a Massey Ferguson, and I told her when she did, I said, we're both going to be guessing on this, but this is a rule I learned a long time ago. Find a comparable John Deere unit that we've done, and the net trade on that Massey Ferguson will be 20% less. So we went through them steps, and then she actually went and did that one. I made her go do it, and then we discussed it after that.
I think that's a good point. I think I especially noticed that, when you're giving some instructions or trying to work with some folks, if there's gray area, it's really difficult. Sometimes you can't define every step necessarily, or it's a project, that's, somewhat new. You're trying to do something. So you mentioned, hey, this is what I've done with Massey Ferguson without perfect information. Here's my experience and here's what I've done, and you shared that with her, and that was a way to get that done. I think that's a good example of.
And then she went and did it, and I did it separately, and we met back, and we were $300 apart, so.
Perfect.
Worked out pretty good.
Perfect, but very,
Structured conversation.
yeah, very detailed too, and just, what would you, if it was unstructured, you'd probably say do better on the evals? Or
Nah, I
we need
can't
to
really
do
do
better on
that.
them?
If I want her to do it, if
Right.
I want her to take on this project, I really can't do that. It's gotta be pretty detailed and data driven.
Yeah, but someone could say, just do them better,
Yeah.
and that would just not be enough. Yeah,
You could just say, do more research.
yeah, do more research, yeah. So,
But when there was only 3 things to research on this 2022 Massey Ferguson, there wasn't a whole lot out there, so.
so the direction or concrete next steps then were, Chad, she had to go out and do it, and then you guys were both gonna do it and compare notes.
Mm-hmm.
And you did it, so you did it right then.
Yep.
So that was the timing. Anybody else have an example they want to share? Devin, I saw you jotting down some notes there. Want to share an example?
Well, I would start the conversation with more of a get the formalities out of the way just to kind of gauge kind of where they are at that time to help kind of lead the conversation so it doesn't feel like it's a performance-based conversation, it feel like it's happening.
Yeah.
So you can kind of ease into if there is an issue, what is the issue and how do you get through it and around it to keep moving forward, and what information do they need from you to be able to get it. I guess that's the point of what happens.
Okay. Yeah, I think that beginning is kind of, can be a challenge. And do you have any advice for all of us to get things started when you're talking about, a performance conversation, like coaching or teaching conversation? And
Well, I think you guys are right on it with starting off with asking their perspective, because I think, like you said, it provides that roadmap for where you're going to go with it. I would put some context around it, like, when we kicked off this project, we talked about how important it was that this is highly visible with whomever, or this is something that has to be done by, within this time frame, and just kind of put some context and guardrails around that conversation, and then take it from where you're going. But I think you all are on the right track.
Sometimes, with performance things, you're trying to look at those teams of what you're doing, and then it's also how you're doing. The performance side comes into how well are you communicating with the people around you, or are you just trying to burden them through that kind of thing that can help us set up more of those next step conversations. We may be getting results, but the way we're getting it,
For 2 different things.
is maybe causing a rift someplace else. They're winning, but somebody else is losing because of the way this is unfolding, perhaps.
Let's flip it around a little bit. Not everybody in this room necessarily has direct reports. There's people in this room that currently are collecting one of those as a support person. They're collecting information from others, whether they be, sometimes they are in terms of the hierarchy, they're higher or lower, higher, whatever, but they're trying to get information from people, and sometimes they can't get that information, and they're working with somebody on a daily basis. So it's more, I guess you'd have a similar conversation. Let's not call it a performance conversation, but how would you approach someone, let's say that you're not able to get the information in order to get your job done, how would you structure that conversation, which I think is very similar to this? I mean, you could have the same conversation, right? I mean, you almost have to. You have to say, okay, I mean, how would you deal with somebody that isn't getting the work? So you can get your
I'm
job
not sure the
done.
conversation is all that different.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's probably exactly the same, but is there anything you would do to start it differently? Just say the same thing?
You might ask them to tell you a challenge that they might have with the project so that, it might be something that you're unaware of, and then you can suggest ways to help them out with whatever challenge they might be having, or suggest some resources that they might utilize to help them out in that scenario.
Yeah, I think too, also explaining, what you have to do in order to get it done. I think one of the common things that happens, I've noticed on projects is, the deadline is the 28th of the month. And so everyone thinks the deadline is the 28th of the month, but I have to give you my work, I have to give to you by the 24th in order for you to get your work done by the 28th. And so sometimes it's just, the management of the project really isn't to that level of detail where there's deadlines by person. So they didn't know that and they're not getting it to you. So there's got to be that kind of communication. So
We get it.
And them not getting impacted by it.
Yeah.
So if you don't get this to me by the 24th.
then I can't get it by the 28th. Yeah.
And that's the real importance, I think, if you back it up, like this is kind of jumping in maybe mid-project in this conversation we're in, but how important it is to have good, clear, defined goals
Yeah.
when you start something, right? That makes it so much easier to have these conversations later. If you've got a backdrop to come back and say, this is what we said initially, here's where we are, you know what I mean? So that can help you drive
Yeah. We run into that constantly in marketing because we're trying to work about 90 days ahead. And so very common that, we get something like, hey, we need sales this week, so you turn that around. No, this week. It's impossible, but.
And not just being just very specific though on your expectations of what you want. You can't just leave it open-ended. I mean, if you need it on the 28th, I gotta tell Matt, you have to have your stuff here at the 24th.
Yeah.
Devin, you gotta get your stuff to Matt by the 23rd. Man, I think that's on the manager's part to say, hey, here's the project, here's the due date.
Yeah.
But these are the milestones we're gonna pass to get here, and that's go in and say, figure it out.
Yeah.
Well, we ran into this yesterday actually on commission planning. To get them to Beth in time, her deadline is the 15th. Dan helped us out that we need to get our commissions to the salesman on the 10th. So it gives her that time to work. So exactly what you're saying, if we work out, so we're not, the 15th is her deadline. So we're not making her work at 12-hour day.
Well, and I think that's it. I used a project-based example, and maybe that wasn't as pertinent to this, but we have kind of set deadlines like those payroll deadlines that we all kind of, seems to be kind of a sore spot that we all seem to miss or we struggle with. And I don't think we really think about the things like what Beth has to do, like what Ron has to do. We always seem to be pushing those people to the max, that last little bit. And Ron does have conversations with them, but they're not like, he does have conversations, I hear them.
We hear them in Watertown.
They don't look like that at all. They're not in writing, they're not, yeah, you know what I mean? But that's what he's trying to communicate. That's what Beth is trying to communicate too, is like, hey guys, I mean, you can't give it to me on
Well, you can't,
And
if you're not doing your AP throughout the month. I mean, if everybody dumped all of their AP invoices
Yeah.
on the AP department on the 28th, 29th, 30th, I mean, we're not gonna have very accurate financials for that month because you just physically can't pound all those invoices into the system in 2 or 3 days. I mean, same with sales. We fight this in sales, and that the salesman, had a tendency to try and run all these deals the last 2 or 3 days of the month, and it's just not gonna. You just can't physically get it done. And Ron is willing to work, practically 20 hours a day, weekend or a holiday, depending on how the calendar falls. You're gonna end up with, probably undesirable results, and mistakes get made because people are in a hurry. So
Yeah, I think that this conversation, or that coaching, teaching conversation could be written as a template. Almost everyone in our company could take it around and just never talk to everybody about it, because that's what we're spending a tremendous amount of money to fix that specific problem of doing some of those, doing your dishes every day kind of things. And so this is the exact conversation we're trying to have. And, we're adding things like the Connect. We have some software coming in to try to get people to pay by credit card so we can stimulate payments immediately. We're even trying to spend more money to make it happen a different way. So it's interesting, this accountability is, and this is the conversation. So this is a good one to practice, because we should all be using it. We are using it every day. Everybody's probably delivering it a different way. And I guess what we've used it so far is get the tickets in. That's what we've said so far, get the tickets in. So that's probably not detailed enough, right? Based on what we learned.
Pretty open-ended.
Pretty open-ended. That's not the right way to
we have
communicate.
standards. We have expectations. From the last flavor punch to that work order being closed, it's supposed to be what, Matt? 6 days or something? I don't know.
3 days. I mean, that was right.
3 days. You guys have moved up, so I think the expectation's out there. I think we need to repeat it more.
But this conversation probably has to happen with people with very detailed to say, hey, it's 3 days, and what's preventing you from doing that. And
I think the why is just as important though too. Like, I don't think someone at a parts counter is, or whomever that's processing AP invoices is thinking about what the financials are going to look like at the end of the month. I mean, that's just not on their radar. And what would that even mean? What's the importance of that? If you're not familiar with accounting or.
It's a great point, because we were just talking about that here recently. When we talk about what we're trying to do to like cash tickets, for instance, that some people don't even have visibility. They think, for what we have, like we got $400,000 in cash tickets sitting out there. You know what I mean? And when you take something and the only contact in there is for Bob, and there's no phone number, and there's nothing, and they left the thing, and it's giving people a better perspective of how their actions impact the bigger picture, right? We're in bros bed at 11 o'clock today.
yeah.
And I think sometimes too, we're really good about maybe putting out a standard or a policy procedure one time, but then it never gets talked about again. And then 2 years later, they're like, well, we sent an email about it, however long ago. I think sometimes understanding that, maybe some people are in different positions, or we've had new people come in and, it may be assumed that is a standard or expectation, but it may have not been communicated to some new people that have either moved to new positions or have come on in the meantime.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think, you're absolutely right. So I really do think that this is a conversation that we don't have this conversation very much, and we're guilty of not having this detailed conversation, really giving the specifics to people. Rather, we just demand the results. and not really have a conversation like this. So good one to practice for sure. So let's press on like the nails and go on to review 24, and let's get the old quiz done. So will somebody that hasn't taken the quiz sign into Teams and share their screen while I'm doing the review?
Clayton, are you doing?
Yeah,
already in the middle of the
in
quiz.
there.
Oh, I thought you did. Sorry.
Okay, so the quiz is going to be on lessons 21 through 25, and so you know that. So some of the lessons are part of that manager's landscape. We had lessons 21 and 22 were the where and the when, and then the manager's landscape, which was who, why, what, how, when, and where. And then we had 24, which is learn to talk like a performance coach. And then 25 was start asking the right questions. You remember that lesson?
Yeah.
Okay, good, Kim. We just did it. We just finished it like a minute ago. Okay, so where, so remember where do you meet this person? Where's the best place to meet? So remember we talked about maybe you take a walk around the dealership, you find an empty office, meeting the person, maybe, not necessarily a video meeting might not be good, but it could be something that you do. You probably don't want to email and text. But let's see if you had a choice between, video meeting or, maybe video meeting or email or text. And what would you pick between that? Video versus email?
So the questions are have to create one, must make better use of phone or email, or compromise on a less than ideal location.
Yeah.
So you have to create one.
Yeah.
Whether it's.
Yeah. So you're going to the quiz. Yeah. So, all right. So where? I was trying to give you that answer, but there it is. All right. So that would be a key thing on 21. 22, when? The key thing there, no matter what schedule you decide on, make sure that you go no more than 2 weeks to have a one-on-one. That's one thing to remember from that lesson. Remember that lesson? Okay. So also when we covered lesson 22, we talked about low performers and the effects of under management. So sometimes a low performer just needs more meeting with them more frequently and pinpointing the specific areas where they're experiencing difficulty in the work may be all they need to really flourish. So remember, a low performer just needs a little bit more guidance to maybe become, a better worker. And then you have the manager's landscape, the 6 questions. Who is this person at work? Why do they need to manage this person? What do they need to talk about with this person? How do you need to talk with this person? When should you talk to this person? What time, how often, and where should you talk to this person? Remember, you're talking about work only. You're only talking with that person. You're only talking about their performance. Which on lesson 24, learn to talk like a performance coach, we did talk about that. If you remember, we talked about one-on-one meetings and talking about their individual performance, not anyone else's performance. And on lesson 25, which we did just now, we talked about common questions. How's everything going? Everything on track? Anything I should know about? Again, being specific, these types of questions that will tell you what you need to know about the details of the work, so being specific. So let's go to the quiz. So we'll do it as a group here. I'm willing to wager that we can get. So if there's not a natural venue for conversations, you what? Have to create one, must make a better use of phone and email, compromise on a less than ideal location.
Great one.
Righto, A is the answer. All right, let's go to the next one. Fill in the blank. When an employee is working remotely, that makes it much easier to improperly rely on blank to manage them. One-on-one, touching base, phone or email. Touching base is correct, B. Number three.
You can tell you read that one pretty quick.
I'm sorry.
I skipped that one, but no, I was.
Number 3, when is a two-part question. What are the 2 parts? Check all that apply. When is management necessary for somebody? How often does someone need to be managed? What time is best to meet with someone? When do you not have to manage someone? When do you not have time to manage? When do you not have to manage someone? What do you think?
All but the last one.
So let's take the first one. Is that applicable? When is management necessary for somebody?
Yes.
The 2-part question.
It was the most critical. Is it critical?
So there's 2 answers, right?
Yep.
So you have to pick 2.
Well, then it should say check 2 that apply.
Actually does.
No, it says check all that apply.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, you're right.
That applies.
The middle two.
Okay.
How often
B.
and what time is best?
You got it. B and C. Nailed it. Good job. Okay. Sometimes a blank determines your meeting time and frequency. So what would determine if you're going to have a performance conversation, what would determine the time and frequency? Sometimes.
Well, it's kind of asking you, like, of these 3, though, like, what would really drive you to that?
Yeah.
Right? You know, what drives you to it? Which one of those 3? Is it a performance problem, right? Is it a task you got to follow up on? Or is it a person from another team that is forcing you to do that in general?
Remember, you're only talking about them, so it's not somebody else, right?
Right.
So it's not C.
Would it be a task or responsibility because that's what your training was it on?
You know, I would have thought that, but the answer is A, performance problem.
Because
So
if there is a problem, it's going to drive how
Yeah.
often
yeah,
and
it's
how
gonna
critical you have to be.
yeah, that's gonna drive the
Put it
time.
in the context of coaching, because coaching, you know, from what Bruce would talk about in here, is about, you know, talking about how to improve your performance. Yeah. So I mean, the task and responsibility definitely as a supervisor, you know, the context here as a coach, that's more why, because he calls it out.
Yeah. So yeah, when it happens is when.
It could be either, but I think that's.
Okay, number 5, some people you have written off as low performers actually just need, we'll give them some more recognition and rewards.
Guidance
Yes.
Everybody gets in point.
More guidance. We just covered it. Actually. Give them a raise. Transfer them to another department. If you are not meeting with someone at least blank, you are not managing them in a meaningful way. How often? There it is. I gave you a good tip. What are we on? Number 7. You cannot ask 6 questions just once a year because what do you think?
Personally, it would be B.
So that we can throw that one out. We know we're not going with Tim.
I would say circumstances of people change.
Yeah, you are correct. That's very true. So number 8. So the two pieces of effective coaching style dialogue are,
There's a typo.
Yeah.
where's it?
You're missing a line.
Uh-huh.
There's quite a few typos.
They're not English.
They're also not good with pages.
They apparently didn't have very good proofreader either.
Yeah, maybe that's in the format.
I find stuff-
Kind of throwing it in the wall.
Yeah.
Yes, you are correct.
Give this credibility in your quizzes.
Number 9. Describing language means describing, is it other people's behavior? No, right? I'm not talking about other people. So,
Keyword.
key forms that you are seeing from the play in question, right? Indeed, that is correct. Number 10. Select the questions that are the right questions. So remember, this is from what we just covered. We just covered this morning. What did you do? Right? Did we say that? And what did you do? What are you going to do next? What updates do you have for me? Remember, we said that's probably too vague, right?
Well, if they lead themselves to one-word answers. Right?
Yeah,
What
right.
do you have? What advice do you have for me? Nothing. Is there anything I should know about? Not really.
And is there anything I should know about? That's 2. So what did you do? What?
How did you do
Oh,
that?
how did you do that? I couldn't see it. Yep, that's correct. Nailed it. We're on how many more are there? All right.
Last one.
Yeah.
Okay, this was at the end of the video. Always point to, he said it right at the end of the video.
Concrete next to
Yeah, you remembered the video. Good job. Let's see how you did it. You nailed it. Good job, Corey. All right. So that is the quiz. And we are mowing through this. So let's press on here. Actually, who's on there? Corey, do you mind just pushing forward? And let's see.
Clayton's on. Usually had it.
Oh, Clayton, you mind playing 26? When you share, you'll have to click that button on top.
Is to master the technique of describing language. One of the most important aspects to learning how to talk like a coach or a teacher is to master the technique of describing language, using describing language instead of naming language. I said this before, but I really want to emphasize it. See, most people, they err on the side of naming language. I don't mean calling people names, but just referring to someone's performance as sloppy or slow, referring to someone with an attitude issue as having a bad attitude. It's very hard to hear, and it's very easy to argue when you use naming language. But if you can break things down and spell things out, describe, it makes your performance evaluations more neutral and easier to hear. And it makes your advice easier to act on. Imagine you're running down the field and you have a coach running behind you saying, you're too slow. And you're looking over your shoulder and you're saying, I know. And they're saying, run faster. And you're saying, I'm trying. That's not very helpful. It's just irritating. But a good coach will run behind you and say, pick your knees up, push off, pull your elbows in, tuck your chin, keep your eyes on the ground, or keep your eyes ahead of you. That's helpful. Oh, that's how to run faster. It's like a salesperson with a sales manager who's looking at your numbers saying, your numbers are too low. Well, I know that. Well, bring your numbers up. Well, I'm trying. It's much more helpful if the manager tells you, well, make these phone calls and say these words from this script.
ask these questions. These are the selling points to emphasize. Follow these concrete steps. Oh, that's how I make my numbers go. When you listen to yourself and try to catch yourself using naming language and try to get in the habit of breaking things down and spelling things out. Describe, describe, describe.
Okay, if you want to turn to page 25 in your workbook. So suppose you're taking tennis lessons. Here are the kinds of things your tennis coach says. So as a group, let's discuss, are these statements helpful? Helpful, not helpful, and obviously they've rewritten them a little bit over on the other side of what's that we discussing. So they gave different types of examples, but are these helpful or not helpful? This isn't a tennis coach thing, but how would you coach or how a coach or teacher talks, not this, but this. They gave examples, but the tennis coach here. No, I have this here. Okay. So tennis coach, so you're moving too slowly, get your serve in more often, you've got a great backstroke. So helpful or not helpful, and why?
Because they're easy to, so this is like one of my favorite things. So let me soapbox for a moment, I apologize in advance. Like these are like buckets of behavior, right? They're big things, and one that typically gets used is something like, well, you're not a good team player, or you're seeming defensive, and the problem with that is that they can be interpreted multiple ways. So if I tell Dave he's not a good team player, and he thinks he's a really good team player, we're going to have an argument about what that looks like. So the advice I always give people is that when you're using describing language as he's using, you can see it, you can hear it, and there's generally only one interpretation. So you're that specific that it's an action that you've seen, or it's something that you heard them say, and that they can't argue as easily with that as they can with, and these aren't even helpful. So, but when they get to the describing language here, that's what really they're doing. Okay, I'm done now.
Say it again, you can see it?
You can see it, you can hear it, or you can see it, or you can hear it, and there's generally only one interpretation.
So how would you change your moving too slowly? So let's give a more of a, well, I'll let you go. You can turn it into some sort of scenario. I'm thinking
it's interesting because
assignment.
they're saying start asking the right questions, and
I'm thinking that I'm thinking like you turned in you're not getting your assignments in on time.
Well, yeah, I mean, we can go back to the accounts payable one. I mean, it's when I don't get the information from you that when I don't get the information I need from you until the 15th, that puts me behind schedule and I'm unable to get to my goals.
You're going to incur a late charge from the vendor.
And so
because
it's just a chain reaction that starts with when you're late, it just goes.
That's something you can see.
So we need to know what too slowly, means. We need to, can't, if you say too slowly, nobody really knows what it means that you're saying that.
Well, you can interpret it multiple ways.
Yeah, like you said, okay, get your serve in more often, again, I guess the coach would have to show me how to do that. Need to know what actions to take to improve. Language needs to be more descriptive. Statements are too vague. Yeah, so those type of things are important with those type of statements. So, using describing language, I think, is really important. And I think what everybody uses regularly. I know yesterday we were talking in the Connect meeting and they kept saying the word admin. And I was struggling with that. Maybe I was a little bit picky on it, but admin can mean so many things to people. And we're talking about a group of people. Well, groups of people, admin, who would that be? We were trying to define it, but I do find myself wanting to know specifically what people are talking about, whether they talk in pronouns or, they. And we do that sometimes, I think, because we do have guidelines that have been around forever, and we have people that are new in jobs, and so we'll just say, well, well, that's what they say. We're supposed to do this, and you don't really know where it comes from or why you're doing that or stuff like that. I mean, does anybody have an example of things that you feel aren't examples of things that aren't described very well that you run into?
I'll just say, it's more just an example or a statement from my prior position I had, but my manager, she hated when people use the term a lot. Like a lot of people are saying, or this happens a lot. And if somebody used that, she would stop them kind of mid-sentence and say, what does that mean? Is it happening once a week?
What's the frequency?
Once a day? Don't use a lot. And so, I mean, that has stuck with me I worked for her in 1995. I tend to not use a lot.
Yeah.
A lot. I tend to only use that about once a month.
All I have is the funny being a funny one, Kim.
Huh?
No. So it does. So that happens a lot. I guess when we're in support roles, we do get a lot of those type of comments from the field. We'll get a comment that nobody's buying it because the price is too high, and if you really drill down, they only heard that from one person, and that's a good time to kind of quiz them. How many people did you hear that from? Oh, well, I heard it from a couple. Well, a couple who? And then they name one, and they can't name another. So they heard it from one person. So people tend to do that a lot when they're trying to change a policy or change a guideline or get an exception. That's a common thing that I notice people do. Chad, you must get that a lot.
He's keeping score over there.
You must get it every day. Very frequent. Okay. So I think we are out of time. So what I'm going to do is I did have an assignment. Let's see. Let's see, page 31 in your workbook. So page 31 in your workbook, if you like or not, if you like, we'll review that coaching and teaching script. Please use practice the describing words, and this is the exercise this is the same exercise we did to start the class, but this one you can do on somebody that you work with or somebody that you manage. If they're in this class, you can use a code name, a lot maybe, caller, and then you can fill this out And we'll start the class next time with that, since we didn't get time, and we'll wrap it up with that. Any questions, concerns, comments? Don't want to come to class anymore?
Well, I had a lot of fun.
Swung your head around.